You do it about 15,000 times a day, yet you never think about it. It takes less than a third of a second, moving faster than almost any other muscle in your body. It is the blink. It feels entirely automatic, a subconscious reflex designed to keep you comfortable. But what happens if you consciously choose to stop? What if you look at a clock, lock your eyes open, and refuse to blink for 10 entire minutes? Within 60 seconds, your body will treat this quiet experiment as a full-blown physical crisis. Your brain will begin to distort your reality, your vision will betray you, and your nervous system will fight you with everything it has. If you enjoy learning how your body, mind, and the world really works, subscribe now, because this channel breaks down complex things in simple ways. By the time you reach the end of this 10-minute challenge, your eyes will not just be dry. They will be fundamentally changed, and the way your brain processes sight will have temporarily broken down. To understand why your body reacts so violently to a lack of blinking, we have to look at what that split-second movement actually does. Most people assume blinking is just a mechanical way to clear away dust or wipe away an occasional stray eyelash. We view it like a windshield wiper, something that turns on only when the environment gets messy. But that is only half the story. Blinking is actually a complex, continuous life support system for your eyes. Every single time your eyelids close, they apply a microscopic, three-layered shield over your cornea. This is not just water, it is a highly sophisticated cocktail of mucus, saline, and oils produced by tiny glands hidden inside your eyelids. This mixture, known as the tear film, is responsible for keeping the surface of your eye perfectly smooth and optically clear. Without it, light cannot focus correctly, meaning you cannot see properly. When you choose to stop blinking, you are not just testing your willpower, you are actively cutting off the environment that keeps your brain connected to the visual world. But here's where it gets interesting. The moment you cross the 60-second mark without blinking, the initial comfort completely evaporates. The thin, protective tear film on your eye does not just sit there, it begins to evaporate immediately. Within 10 to 15 seconds of holding your eyes open, tiny dry spots form across your cornea. Your brain interprets this evaporation as an emergency. It floods your nervous system with pain signals, triggering an intense, burning sensation that demands you close your eyes. This is the exact moment where your biology turns against you. In the early 2000s, researchers studying the limits of human blinking observed that the urge to blink becomes so overwhelming after just 1 minute that it mirrors the panic of holding your breath underwater. Your body recognizes that a dry cornea is a vulnerable cornea, open to infection and structural damage, and it starts fighting your conscious mind to force those eyelids shut. And this is where most people get it wrong. They assume that if they can just fight through that initial burning sensation, their eyes will adapt and the pain will fade. But as you push into the 3rd and 4th minutes, the opposite happens. Your eyes, desperate to protect themselves, try a different tactic since you refuse to blink. They begin to flood the surface with reflex tears. This is a completely different kind of fluid than the daily tear film. It is almost entirely water, lacking the essential oils needed to stick to the eye. Instead of soothing the burning, these watery tears simply spill over your eyelids and run down your face. Your vision begins to blur significantly, as if you are looking through a rain-streaked window. The very mechanism your body uses to save your sight actually distorts it, making it impossible to see the world with any clarity. But that's only half the story, because by the 5th minute, the crisis moves from the surface of your eye straight into the neural pathways of your brain. As your cornea grows increasingly distorted and dry, the visual information entering your pupils becomes chaotic and fragmented. Your brain is accustomed to receiving a freshly updated, perfectly clear image every 4 seconds through a blink. When that update fails to arrive, the visual cortex begins to struggle. This brings us to a strange psychological phenomenon known as Troxler's fading. First discovered in 1804, this effect shows that when you fixate on a single point without moving your eyes or blinking, your peripheral vision begins to disappear. The brain decides that static, unmoving visual data is irrelevant. Slowly, the edges of your vision turn into a dull, featureless gray. The world literally begins to fade away from the outside in, leaving you trapped in a shrinking tunnel of failing sight. The stakes get even higher as you push toward the seventh minute of the experiment. Your brain, starved of clean visual input and confused by the lack of blinking, begins to make mistakes. It tries to fill in the blanks of the blurry, fading world around you. This is where people report experiencing vivid visual distortions. Objects in your room might appear to shift, grow, or melt. Shadows seem to move on their own. This is not because your eyes are broken, but because your mind is trying to guess what it is looking at based on incomplete, corrupted data. The psychological strain shifts from simple discomfort to a profound sense of disorientation. You are no longer just fighting a physical reflex, you are fighting your own mind's interpretation of reality. To understand why this breakdown happens so systematically, we have to look at the math behind how your brain and eyes communicate. Every single blink acts like a cognitive reset button. When your eyelids close for that fraction of a second, it creates a brief moment of total darkness. Scientists have discovered that during this tiny window of darkness, the brain actually suppresses activity in the visual cortex and parts of the parietal lobe. It gives your mind a microscopic break, a moment to catch its breath and categorize the information it just received. When you deny your brain these thousands of tiny daily breaks, the neural circuits become overworked and fatigued. The sensory overload causes a breakdown in attention, which is why your mind begins to hallucinate and lose focus. The blink is not just a physical cleaner, it is a mental punctuation mark. Without it, your visual experience becomes one long, exhausting, unreadable sentence. If you somehow manage to survive the psychological tricks of the brain and push all the way to the 10-minute mark, the physical consequences become severe. The exposed surface of your eye has now been completely unprotected against the open air for 600 seconds. The cells on the outermost layer of your cornea, starved of oxygen and moisture, begin to experience microtrauma. Without the constant nourishment of the tear film, these cells can actually begin to dry up and slough off, a painful condition known as superficial punctate keratitis. Your eyes will be bloodshot, raw, and intensely inflamed as blood vessels expand to rush oxygen to the damaged tissue. When you finally allow yourself to blink, the relief will not be instant. The friction of your eyelid moving across a severely dry, damaged cornea will feel like sandpaper dragging across your bare eye. It can take hours or even days for the tear film to properly rebuild and for your vision to stabilize. This extreme reaction raises a fascinating question about how we interact with our modern world every single day. While very few people sit down and try to go 10 minutes without blinking on purpose, millions of us are accidentally doing a milder version of this experiment every single day. When we stare at smartphones, computer screens, or televisions, our blink rate drops automatically by up to 60%. We enter a state of hyperfocus where our brain suppresses the natural urge to blink, so we do not miss any digital information. This is why your eyes feel heavy, dry, and irritated after a long day at a desk. We are constantly pushing our eyes to the brink of exhaustion, forcing them to operate in a state of perpetual dehydration. The discomfort we feel at our screens is a quiet, muted echo of the agony that comes from the 10-minute challenge. Ultimately, the act of holding your eyes open for 10 minutes reveals just how fragile our perception of reality truly is. We walk through the world assuming that what we see is an objective, solid truth. But our access to that truth depends entirely on a microscopic, fragile layer of moisture that must be refreshed every few seconds. Our entire visual universe is sustained by a constant, unconscious rhythm of opening and closing. It makes you wonder what other invisible, automatic processes are quietly holding our minds together every single second. We take our stability for granted, never realizing that the line between a clear world and absolute chaos is as thin as a single blink.